Hey guys, how's it going? Hope you're doing well. My name is Crown, and today I'm going to read you some very interesting stories that I hope that you're gonna love. And now, without further ado, let's go! Here is one of a few crazy stories I encountered while working at a popular fast food chain 2 years ago. So, for clarification, the chain I worked for, I was there about a year and some, had a drive-thru. It only had one lane at the time, and we had experimented with many ideas on how to speed the whole process and make it easier for the customers. One method was to have an extra lane jerry-rigged with cones that semi-circled through the parking lot following the path of the normal drive-thru lane. This worked fairly well but made it tougher on the employees, having to dodge impatient soccer moms and carry huge orders back and forth. But all in all, it was doing fine. On the shift I worked, I was placed as a runner. I managed the second lane by taking payment, bringing change and carrying the order out. Simple. Since we had double the traffic at this point, food was pretty slow. Not terrible, but not great. Anyways, we occasionally got the obnoxious customer. Cheap, impatient, entitled, ratchet and racist. Nothing new. But that day, I encountered something incredible. A level 10 customer, someone who had zero respect for anyone. I started off by asking if his name is X. To clarify his order, when he pulled up and he just about ran over my foot with his 1998 Peter Civic. Certified jerk. Let's call him Richard from now on, shall we? I stepped back and asked again. He kind of brushed me off, so I assumed it was a correct order. Gave him the total like $10 and change, and he gave me a crisp $100 bill. Just to elaborate, when you start working there, you're told to always check with a manager for bills above $50. Now I have been there for a while and handled lots of cash in past jobs. I could tell a fake from a real one with no issues without the testing marker or the bill checker machine. So right when he handed me the 100, I knew it was fake. Now me, being a bored teenager, I wanted to cause some trouble. So, as I was walking away, I decided to get his license plate. I walked up to the register window and told him to write it down and call the cops. I also told my manager to check and confiscate the counterfeit bill. This all happened pretty quick, mind you. Richard starts shouting at me, not 2 minutes later calling me a jerk, how he's a busy man and doesn't have time for this nonsense. I went back over and gave him some nonsense excuse in my suck-up customer service voice. Yes sir, my apologies, give us just a minute. Our kitchen is having trouble keeping up right now, and I will throw in some extra fries for your troubles. That seemed to calm him down for a second. When I got back to the window, my manager said it was indeed a fake, and the cops were on their way. All going according to plan. While this was happening, he again started shouting and yelling, demanding my mother-father money. I did my best to console him. Just trying to buy time, I asked him to pull up and come inside, and we will give him discounts for the future. Richard was out of his car at this point, screaming and stomping around, but decided it was worth it. So he came into the store again, being loud and stomping around. And that's when he saw the cop cars pull up. The restaurant has a lot of glass, and you can see right through it from most angles. The look on his face was priceless. He turned so quickly and awkwardly walked back to his car. Before he got inside the store, we had motioned the cops towards his car, plucking him in. He was caught with nowhere to run. I was still outside and I could hear him shouting. He was yelling and threatening me and my co-workers. I guess my menacing grin gave it away that it was us that caused this. After dear Richard was in cuffs and stuffed in the cop car, I was pulled inside. I had to speak to the cops and tell them detail for detail what happened. They asked if I would comply in giving a statement in court if they needed it. I mentioned that this guy had multiple warrants and was somewhat dangerous. I of course agreed without hesitation. Now sadly they never called upon me, but the memory lives on. A bit anticlimactic, but it was a rush for teenage me nonetheless. So yeah, that is the story of how I caught a criminal. Thanks for listening. It was a busy Monday morning at the coffee shop, and I was feeling a bit frazzled as I tried to keep up with a rush of customers. So when Karen strutted up to the counter already looking annoyed, I braced myself for a difficult interaction.
"I'd like a venti latte with soy milk, extra hot,"
Karen said, practically throwing the words at me. She barely made eye contact, instead scanning the shop as if she was trying to find something else to complain about. I took a deep breath and put a smile on my face. "Of course, ma'am. That'll be $4.50. Would you like anything else with that?" Karen huffed and crossed her arms.
"Do you have almond milk?"
I hesitated for a moment, knowing where this was going. "I'm sorry, ma'am. We're currently out of almond milk. We're expecting a delivery later today, but for now, we do have soy, coconut, and oat milk available as alternatives." Karen's eyes narrowed.
"This is completely unacceptable. How do you run out of such a basic item? And what kind of coffee shop doesn't have almond milk?"
I tried my best to stay calm and professional despite Karen's mounting anger. "I apologize for the inconvenience, ma'am. We had a delivery issue this morning and it threw off our inventory. But we do have a variety of other milks available, and I'm sure we can find something that you will enjoy." Karen let out a loud, exaggerated sigh.
"Fine, I'll take the soy milk then. But this better not be watered down or overcooked, or I will be back to complain."
I gritted my teeth and nodded, turning to start making Karen's drink. As I reached for the soy, I could feel Karen's eyes boring into my back. She was clearly not satisfied with my response and was looking for any reason to cause a scene. Just as I was about to pour the milk into the cup, Karen leaned across the counter and got right in my face.
"You better fix this,"
she spat out.
"I don't have time for this incompetent service."
I took a step back, feeling my heart race. No one had ever spoken to me like that before, and I wasn't sure how to react. But before I could even respond, a man stepped in between us. "Ma'am, there is no need to speak to her like that," he said calmly. Karen sneered at him and tried to push past him, but he stood his ground. "I am not going to let you bully her," he said firmly, his voice low but determined. Karen's face turned red with rage and she swung at him, trying to slap him. But the man was quick and easily dodged her attack. "I'm not going to fight you, ma'am. Just calm down," he said, holding his hands up in surrender. But Karen wouldn't calm down. She kept swinging and screaming, completely out of control. The man kept trying to avoid using force, but Karen wouldn't stop. She kept trying to punch and slap him, her face blazing with anger. Finally, after she threw one too many punches, the man had had enough. He grabbed her arm and with one swift move, brought her to the ground. Karen let out a loud yelp as she fell, then lay there motionless. I immediately called for the EMTs and the police. My hands were shaking as I dialed the numbers, still in shock from the sudden violence. The man who had come to my defense stood off to the side, looking apologetic but also relieved that the situation was under control. When the EMTs and the police arrived, they rushed over to Karen and began checking her vitals. She was still unconscious, but they were able to revive her after a few minutes. She groggily opened her eyes and tried to sit up, but the EMTs gently restrained her.
"What's happened? Where am I?"
Karen mumbled, looking confused. One of the police officers turned to me and the man who had come to my defense. "Can either of you tell us what happened here?" I hesitated for a moment, not sure how much to say, but the man stepped forward and explained the situation concisely and calmly. He told the officers about Karen's aggressive behavior and how he had intervened to protect me. The officers listened attentively, then turned to Karen and read her her rights. She was arrested on charges of assault and disturbing the peace, and was taken away in the back of a squad car. As the chaos died down and the other customers left, the man who had come to my defense introduced himself as a professional MMA fighter. He apologized for having to resort to physical force and explained that he had just been trying to protect me and himself. I thanked him profusely and gave him a free drink as a token of my gratitude. I knew I owed him my safety and possibly even my life. I never saw Karen again, but I will never forget the entitlement and anger she displayed that day. And I will always be grateful to the stranger who stood up for me and put an end to her violent outburst. Alright, before I start off, let me clarify some things. This happened roughly 12 years ago in primary school. Note that my country, I won't say which, has a different system, and so the kids in primary school are 9 to 16 years old or so. Our school was small and had only about 2 entrances, one from the front and one from a side gate that leads to a garden. Note that to get into the building from the garden and to get to your classes, you had to use stairs, which lead up to a single door. It was tight even for one person. Imagine several classes trying to shuffle in, all at the same time. This will be important later. Another thing to note is police were often taking care of children as they crossed on the zebra on the front. They weren't always there, only like twice a week or so. I was pretty young and naive at the time, and I was always a really easy target for bullies since I was also real sensitive back then. There was a student who would be a senior, about 15 to 16 years old, while I was 10 or so, that was friends with one of my classmates. Let's call this student Brat. Brat was your typical rebel against their parents, a skipping school teenager with a purple hoodie and black emo hair that covered half his face 24/7. He liked to pick on me sometimes in breaks. He purposely look around to find me and tell me that I look like I'm an R-word, that I will likely be beaten up many times in the future. Me being shy and scared, I always just replied with, "I know." It felt bad, but at the time everything felt bad, since I was sensitive as hell. I didn't tell anyone, and so this continued on for a few weeks, before I was building up a little rage, getting tired of this happening so many times. I finally realized that there was more to this than me being sensitive. I finally snapped. Remember that from the garden, the only way to go to your classes is through a tiny door after a series of stairs? Well, he just happened to be passing by as I was trying to enter that door, and he shoved me against the wall. In a quick reflex, I hit him in the back, which probably didn't even hurt him. I was 10 for God's sake. But I didn't think much of it. I kind of forgot about it a few minutes later as I got to my class. And oh boy, Pratt was waiting for me outside of school that day. Just as we were finished and let go by the teachers, we left the building. When I saw him, I felt my heart sink a bit. Pratt drops his bag and walks up to me. "What's up, you little jerk? You want something, huh?" What would I want? I ask him. He grabs me by the neck. "Talk to me now if you dare." In a desperate attempt to get away, I tried to punch him, but again, I'm just a kid, so I end up hitting him in the side, which has no effect. He literally lets go of me and punches me not once, but twice. I fall on the ground in tears, and while my vision is blurry, I quickly get myself together and start to walk away as he's throwing cusses at me. Guess what? Remember when I mentioned that the police were watching out for us sometimes at the zebra? The police was there that day. As I walked past the corner to approach the zebra, I noticed a police car and 2 officers looking at me weirdly. They asked me what happened, and I showed them my obviously beaten face, which I was covering with my hands. They knew what was going on at that point, since they saw the group of people and the loud yelling from the corner, but didn't think anything of it until now. I tell them that it was a guy in a purple hoodie, and they immediately rush in. Pratt sees the police and begins to run. The police went after him, one on foot and the other in a car, and soon enough, they returned with him in cuffs, and they escorted us both back to the school, where we went in the principal's office, which was tiny. This office soon included my mother, Pratt's mother, the principal, the 2 officers who also called the paramedics, since my ear was bleeding a little. So, in a few minutes, there were also 2 paramedics in this oh-so-tiny room. Brad's mother was fuming and so was my mother. They both agreed that this was ridiculous. A 16-year-old beating a 10-year-old. Thankfully, I wasn't badly injured, and I went home after that. From what I knew, Pratt was moved to a reformatory school and had some community service time after this incident. He was charged with assault and harassment. One of my funniest college experiences. This is a story from when I was in college. It has three main characters. Carl, 50-year-old developmentally delayed man about 350 pounds and all solid. Jimmy and Mark, graphic art students. I saw the whole thing transpire. We live in a dorm. I was at the end of a hallway. The other guys were at the beginning near the foyer in rooms right next to each other. Carl was doing upgrading. He was big and burly and enjoyed drinking beer. He had anger control issues and was mildly delayed. If he wanted to, he probably could have choked out both guys with one hand each. His sister, who loved him dearly, got him a cassette boombox for his birthday and the Shania Twain cassette. Carl loved Shania's music. He loved it so much that he would listen to one song at full volume. Shouldn't be a problem. Except he didn't like to close his door. He also liked to rewind the tape while it was still engaged in play mode and let Shania sing that same song over and over and over again. So it got a little weird for everyone else within earshot. Music screeched in reverse for a minute, maybe, and Shania was singing that same song again and again, over and over and over. He'd started about 6 one morning and ran about 3 hours before silence. Oh, blessed silence. I'm in my room at the end of the hall and it was so different that I thought maybe he dropped dead or something. So I went to have a look. Nope, he was heading to the shower. Okay, a few minutes of peace anyway. I went to Jimmy and Mark's room to see how they were faring being closest to Carl. Ever seen an animal that is caged up and being teased lots? That was Jimmy. Mark was more settled. Jimmy reminded me of a hardcore tweaker. He was a bundle of aggravated energy. He asked what was going on. I said, Carl's gone to the shower, quiet for a couple minutes maybe. Jimmy said, screw this. I'm gonna smash the boombox. I said I didn't think that would be a good idea. Carl has past issues. Jimmy said, I can't listen to this anymore. I then went back to my room and closed my door expecting the worst and not wanting to witness it. A few minutes later I hear, jerks! You're all idiots! I'll have the cops on you like oranges. Carl had returned to his room and found his intact boombox without an electrical cord. He then proceeded to dispose of his bathrobe and run up and down the hallway, banging on doors and screaming about the jerks and the oranges. The guy went into full beast mode, foaming at the mouth and even his hair was standing up. I have never seen anyone so agitated in my life. I placed a call to security and housing. Those jerks hated me anyway, always giving me bad roommates. So I decided to ensure they had some excitement that day too. Got the meanest little jerk security guy on the phone and said, there is something wrong with Carl. You might need to come see. Carl had started extending his trips up and down the hallway into the foyer, and then into the ladies' wing, which was a no-go zone for us lads. The security guy almost crapped his pants when he came upon Carl, beat red face, foam, and nothing else. He says to Carl, hey, what are you doing? Go back to your room. Carl's response was, screw you! You sawed off, little idiot! I'll snap your neck! He then proceeded to advance toward the security guard. I was impressed with Carl's vocabulary when he was angry. That security guard executed the perfect face and hit the stairs running. Carl was slower, but managed to trap the security guard in his office on the first floor. Next thing I heard, sirens. It took 8 cops to get Carl into cuffs and into the car. We never saw him again, and we never had to listen to Shania again. I still laugh about it now. Since y'all liked my last story, here's another regarding my jerk supervisor. Let's call her Kathy. So I work at a Canadian coffee chain called Tim Hortons, basically Canadian Dunkin' Donuts. I was about halfway through my shift the other day when Kathy came up to me while I was busy and said,
"You're staying late cause you owe me a favor,"
and walked away. Someone had called in and she wanted me to cover part of their shift. Now, if I stayed late, I'll be working 12 hours. And I'm only on my third day working out of 5 and had to be up early the next day for another shift. Not to mention, I didn't even owe Kathy anything. The favor she's referring to is when she sent me home early cause we weren't busy, which she had to do or she would get in trouble. Now, in Canada, an employer can't force you to stay later like that. So I walked up to Kathy when I had a free moment and I said, "If you want me to stay later, you can ask me properly. I don't disrespect you, so I expect to be given respect in return." Cassie gets snippy.
"Oh, calm down, I was just joking with you."
I was about to fight back, but a light bulb went off in my head. I walked away and continued my work. When the people in the next shift started showing up, I ran my plan past them and they gave me the go-ahead. Cue malicious compliance. Instead of staying later, I went home at my normal time. I didn't stay later as I hadn't agreed to anything. Nearly the second I sat down at home, I got a call from none other than Kathy. I say, "Hello?"
"Where are you? I said you were staying late today."
You said you were joking."
"Yeah, was how I asked, but I figured you needed hours and weren't gonna say no, so I assumed you'd stay."
"Well, I can't. I'm busy." "This is why you should have asked properly." Click. Kathy had to cover the shift. Worst part is, I probably would have considered covering it had she just asked me nicely. But I'm pity. And now we have reached the end of today's stories. Thank you for watching and see you next time.